a lot to say about the compelling science behind climate change. And I am of the mind that when we're out talking about climate change in our community, that we need that science and sound science to be able to talk with our elected officials and talk with our neighbors about the reality of climate change, right? I'm also of the mind that we can't only talk about science, that we need stories and that we need to talk about how it impacts people. And so I was thinking about how I wanted to start, and I decided to tell you a little bit about my story and how it works into Eau Claire's story and how we got to setting the goal of 100% clean energy by 2050. I grew up in a family of public workers. They were social workers. My parents were social workers serving people with addictions and people with mental illness, and they were kind of quiet, modest people, but I was this like fiery teenager who was concerned about climate change, and they were so concerned and confused how I got there. But I grew up, I think in a lot of ways, the climate movement is being led by young people now, and at 27, I'm really actually thrilled to kind of be of the mind that I'm even outside of, I've outgrown this new generation of young people who are leading the climate movement. But as I was growing up, I was a kid who was facing some of the early realities of climate change, and I was coming up in my teens and thinking about the demise of a humanity and why I wanted to be thinking about raising children or buying a home or investing in my community. And that was really hard for me. And I started to fight for climate justice. And when I was early on, I was thinking about how it was going to affect humanity as a whole. And now I realize that climate change is going to be affecting humanity disproportionately. And when I was thinking about the demise of our species, I didn't want to bring up a child in that atmosphere. And now that I think about it more, I don't want to be bringing up a child in a society which is climate unjust, right? And affecting people of low income and people of color disproportionately. And so that led me to run for city council. A couple of other things in between, but fast forward to April 2016, I ran for city council in Eau Claire, won. And then fast forward to November 2016, and a climate denier was elected to our presidency. I was a couple months into my term on the city council, and really stretching my brain to think about I have no control over what I have little control over what our president will do and think about climate change. But on the city council, I have one vote out of 11 to decide what the city of Eau Claire does. And that's a tiny piece of the pie, but that's what I have control over. And so I started to think about what we could do. And we've been fighting for transportation, clean transportation in Eau Claire. We've been fighting for, working with Xcel Energy for a long time on building solar gardens, and that was feeling really good. And then summer 2017 came along, and our president declared that he would be pulling us from the Paris Climate Accord. That was really concerning to me. And now, the United States is still the only country not to be committed to the Paris Climate Accord in the entire world. And that was really disturbing and concerning to me. And I started to think about getting serious on the city council and really looking at what we can do on the local level. How can we do our part to address climate change? This is an interesting new thought for me because I've often thought about what I can do individually, right? On a micro level, what people can do to cut their carbon emissions. And we often think too about what our national government should do and our international government should do really on the macro level, right? But I've never really thought about what the responsibility is for a small community like Eau Claire or Menomonie. And I started to think about that and decide to put forward a resolution on the city council committing to the Paris Climate Agreement, a local community committing to the Paris Climate Agreement. And out of that resolution, we sent it to our sustainability committee, which was created in 2014, and they brought it back to us 6 months later and told us that the most meaningful way for a local community to commit to these goals of the Paris Climate Agreement was to set local clean energy goals, 100% clean energy by 2050. They also conducted a survey that showed broad community support for that initiative as well. So we took a vote on the Eau Claire City Council. At the time, the City Council was actually much more politically diverse than it is now. There were people on our City Council that had surely voted for our president, who was a climate change denier. But because they had heard about the support for clean energy and they knew the financial benefits of it, that resolution actually passed unanimously on the City Council in February 2018. So that was a huge strive, and really something that never had, it was kind of getting started. That wasn't something that we had heard about much before. Now, Eau Claire is joined by communities across the country that have set this goal, including communities in Wisconsin, like Madison, Green Bay, La Crosse, and some other smaller communities that are looking at it. Actually, 1 in 4 Americans are represented by communities who have set this goal. So this is not a new thing, and it's taking on rapidly, and it's really sending the message that we don't need to wait for the federal government and the state government to step up and do their part, that we can do a lot here locally. So since setting those goals, we've kind of taken some steps to create some planning. We're in the middle of a climate action planning process right now, in partnership with Xcel Energy. Actually, they have a Partners in Energy program that is leading our clean energy action planning process. It's been a process that's been really accessible across the community. We've had 50 or 60 partners from the energy sectors to the public sector to the nonprofit sector, serving communities who are most vulnerable, from the labor unions, everybody involved in energy use and energy production, which is everybody, right? And so we're going to be honing in and completing that plan pretty soon. Also, after we set our goal, Xcel Energy made their commitment to 100% clean energy, carbon-free electricity. Is that right? Yeah. Carbon-free electricity by 2050. Which, let's give them a round of applause. You know, Jim mentioned it briefly, but I really want to spend a moment on this because it's really incredible. Xcel Energy was the first large utility in the entire country to make a commitment like this, and they did so because they were hearing from their customers. They heard that their customers wanted this, and they have started to make their plans and make their move towards clean energy. Of course, they've been investing for a long time, but they've made that commitment up to 80% by 2030, and between the last 20% from 2030 to 2050, they're relying on the progression of technology to get us there. That is one thing that I share. One of the many things that I share with these goals that Xcel Energy has is that they're putting their faith in technology to progress at the rate that it has been progressing, and hopefully even faster, to get us to these really aggressive goals. In the city, in Eau Claire, we don't have a plan to get to 100% clean energy because we are accepting that technology to get us there does not yet exist, but we have faith that it will. So some early outcomes that we've seen in Eau Claire, like I said, we only set these goals a couple years ago, but some early outcomes that we've seen have been kind of fundamentally a change in how our city council and our city staff does its operations. Every decision that we're making, every building that we're building, every road that we're constructing, we're thinking about how these projects are achieving our clean energy goals. That was something that I didn't expect to happen so rapidly, but it's a conversation now that we're constantly having. Everyone understands that these are extremely aggressive goals and that it's going to be challenging to reach them. And so every time we're talking about something new, we're talking about how can we, what can we do to integrate these goals into every project that we have. We've made some early investments, capital investments in clean energy. For the first time ever, the City of Eau Claire invested capital dollars from our capital budget, meaning on like physical infrastructure, into clean energy. So we're looking at building solar gardens. We're looking at powering our wastewater treatment facility with solar, and so that's been really exciting. I think a really important outcome is that we sent a message to our energy utility that this is what their customers want, at least in Eau Claire. And we also sent that message to the legislature, the state legislature and the federal legislature. I should mention that we heard a little bit about what's happening on the federal level. There's also some movements happening on the state level too. I want to give a shout out to our governor, Governor Evers, who just in August created the Office of Sustainability, of Clean Energy and Sustainability, to start to look at how to integrate more clean energy into our state. He also created the Climate Change Task Force earlier in October, which is a group of people from across the state looking at addressing climate change statewide. I will say that our legislature, on the legislative level, has some catching up to do. There are a lot of people in the legislature who aren't taking our future seriously. That they're not accepting the science of climate change and not taking that seriously. And so, Wisconsin Conservation Voters is working every day to look for candidates who will be taking that seriously and making sure that voters in Wisconsin know who our champions for the climate are. And lastly, an obvious outcome of setting these goals is a really inspiring community conversation that's happened around this. We, on the City Council, we set our goals thinking that we wanted to really transition to clean energy, but we really hoped that it would create a community conversation for private people to be doing more to transition to clean energy themselves. And we also hoped that it would create conversations in other communities, which it has. Since Eau Claire was the second community to pass clean energy goals, and since then Green Bay and La Crosse and some other communities have done it as well. I just spoke to a group in Baraboo that is working on setting goals too. And now we're here in Menomonie. So the conversation is truly spreading. I think a big motivator and a big reason why we wanted to set these goals is to focus our sustainability action. So in Eau Claire, we had been doing work around sustainability and carbon reduction and clean energy for a long time, a really long time. And I know that that's been happening here in Menomonie too. But we've seen that setting these goals has really focused our energy, our sustainability action, and has set the bar and really set that kind of vision, right? To see what we're trying to achieve, and in focusing that, we can work on this a little bit more efficiently, both by time efficiently, and also financially efficient. And it adds to the movement. That was a big reason why we were setting those goals too. I believe that our transition to clean energy really starts in the local level. All the big changes in our society happen on the grassroots, and there's been a lot of work that's been happening in our communities, in organizations like Citizens Climate Lobby and Sustainable Done is one here in Menomonie, that have been doing a lot to generate excitement and energy around this. And I think it's time for our local communities and our local governments to join them and to raise the climate movement to a new level. And so that's why we are asking the City of Menomonie, the Menomonie Mayor, and also the City Council to make a commitment to 100% clean energy by 2050. We're asking them to join Madison, Green Bay, La Crosse, the City of Eau Claire County, the Eau Claire School District, Sheboygan, and soon Baraboo to set these goals. I want to mention that, and Jim mentioned this before, but I want to mention that Eau Claire school board, county, city, and the university have all set these goals, making Eau Claire the first community to have official commitments from all levels of our local government. And so here in the Chippewa Valley, we're really leading the climate movement in the state of Wisconsin, and we're hoping that the city of Menomonie will join that as well. We're asking the city of Menomonie to make this goal, and I want to kind of raise a couple of resources that our organization and certainly the Eau Claire City Council is putting on the table to help achieve those goals. First, we've been working with students at UW Stout and faculty and administration to provide some resources for data collection, carbon usage data collection, which is often a really it's a big hurdle to leap over for communities who have not yet started collecting that data. So that's one thing. The Public Service Commission has a grant for planning, which the City of Eau Claire has used. And that grant has gone to pay for the Partners in Energy program that Xcel Energy provides. We just talked with Xcel last week, and they're actually scaling that program down to accommodate for communities of Menomonie's size, so it's a little bit cheaper to accommodate a smaller city budget. We also, Wisconsin Conservation Voters is working with Renewable Energy and the Sierra Club to create a clean energy toolkit, which is kind of a document that compiles suggestions for policy change and also tactics for organizing around local climate action. That's going to be coming out at the end of the year, and so it's going to be available to Menomonie and also communities across Wisconsin. And then lastly, with the Eau Claire Climate Action Plan, or Clean Energy Action Plan, is going to be completed, I think, by the end of the year. That's what it sounds like, and so I really think that that can be a good resource for communities like Menomonie to look for policy changes to kind of some low-hanging fruit. So, the most important part. I gave you all the reasons why I think that we should do this here in Menomonie, and I hope that you were compelled. And I think the most important part of this was to give you opportunities on how you can help. If you believe that Menomonie should be joining the local clean energy movement, I have a couple of things that you can do. First, we have a grassroots organizing team, an action team, that's been meeting kind of folks from Sustainable Done, some folks from the League of Women Voters, and some kind of folks from across the community who have been working to plan events like this and some other tactics. So you can join that. We have an action table here. You can clearly see, take action here. And there are a couple things over there that you can do right here before you leave. There's a postcard that we will send to the city for you, and you can write out why you believe the City Council should be passing 100% renewable energy goals. You can write a letter to the editor, to the paper. That's a great way to communicate with your elected officials and also communicate to our community. You can call the City Council and the mayor. There's also contact information, a little flyer for you over here, and ask them to sign, to endorse that resolution for 100% renewable energy. We have a petition that will eventually be given to the city, and you can donate to Wisconsin Conservation Voters to keep work like this going. We have donation slips over here and in the back. And then lastly, the most important thing that I want everyone here to do is to make sure to make your way to the polling booth in every election, and especially November 2020. I want you to go to the polling booth and vote with your values, vote with your heart, and vote remembering that the people who we're electing are going to have an impact on the climate, on the future of our climate, on the future of our children, and they have such a big say, and you have such a big say with your ballot. We are Wisconsin Conservation Voters, and so I would be remiss if I didn't say that. We have a huge opportunity to really turn things around for the climate movement in November 2020, and here locally as well. So Lastly, I'm going to bring up my Clean Energy Fellow. We are doing a lot of work on campus to really generate student support and support of young people in this local project. Like I said at the beginning, the climate movement is really, the breath of life has been breathed into the climate movement by young people across the world. And so we're really trying to harness that energy here in Menomonie as well. So she's going to talk a little bit about what we have planned for campus.
Hi everyone, my name is Adria Leonard. Sorry, can you hear me? Hi everyone, my name is Adria Leonard and I am the Energy Fellow from UW Stout. I've been working with Kate for a few weeks now. And I'm also the Senator for Sustainable Development on campus through the Stout Student Association, which is our student government. So some work that I have done with our student government as far as sustainability is last week in Senate we passed a resolution to support Eau Claire's goal of 100% renewable energy by 2050, and also supporting that for the city of Menomonie here in the future. And as far as my role in some of the sustainability committees throughout the university, we've been working on putting solar panels up on our MSC roof. We've been working on switching over all our lights in the university to LEDs. And these initiatives are plans that were brought up by students and their ideas for what they wanted to see forced out in their sustainability goals. And then with the help of faculty and administration, we actually were able to put these goals into an action plan and achieve results. So I think that the UW Stout University could be a great resource for the community in helping them reach their sustainability goals. And that's something that the UW Stout campus and its students are very passionate about. We want to improve our relationship with the city and provide them with some resources and communicate with them as to how they can reach their goals as well. So a little bit of what I am doing with the students on campus is I'm working to start a grassroots movement, gather students together, communicate with the City Council of Menomonie, speak to the mayor, send out postcards, and I'll be responsible for hosting trainings, and we're also planning on doing some strikes around the city and Menomonie. So yeah, if you see us out there with our signs, feel free to join, but we'll also be advertising some of that in case any city members want to get involved in that. And if you are a student or young person out there and you're looking to get more involved in sustainability and your committee and this initiative, please reach out to me. I would love to talk to you if you're a community member that wants to know a little bit more about how Stout is reaching its sustainability goals and the action plan that we do have in place on campus. I would be more than willing to talk to you about that as well. So please feel free to reach out to me, and that's all I have.
So we're going to open it back up for questions. Is Jim still here? Yeah, okay. So we'll have Jim on hand, so if you have any questions for him, any lingering questions from his speech, you can ask that of him too. I want to remind you really quick, I wanted to mention too that the Dunn County is also looking at 100% renewable energy goals. Don Peter, the county supervisor, is here. And they're just getting started, but they're kind of looking at that too. And so we're looking at a couple of different local government units taking this up in the area. And so if you have any questions of Don as well, feel free to ask them. I did also want to kind of draw attention to the folks in the back from Xcel Energy. They're our community connection here, and so if you have any questions for them about their motivations for setting their goals, we'll open that up for all questions. So, yeah.
I have two, I'll try to do fast. First one is, so you mentioned something and I thought it was interesting about like stories. And so do you think there's in parts more like how people should start to hear, like I'm kind of like a comics animation filmmaker and starting to hear my work towards kind of revolving around in like, I guess, themes, sort of ways, or I guess enforcing stories about community and climate change and stuff. Because I feel like one thing I see a lot of, especially with a lot of the mergers of big media corporations and people, like the discussion around climate change is so dictated and so limited. So working as in like an artistic community to start driving focus to be more about stuff relating to even subtly just about being involved in that kind of stuff. Do you think that doing that kind of stuff with either comics or film or other means of storytelling will have impact?
Yes, absolutely. I fully believe that the artistic community has an integral role in addressing climate change, and I actually want to, as a film student, I want to draw your attention to The Human Element. Is that what that's called? Yeah. Which is a new film that actually Citizens Climate Lobby showed in Eau Claire recently, and they talk about climate change and in the context of stories and real individuals that are being impacted by it. It's an excellent example of the power of storytelling in this subject.
And will be shown on the UW Eau Claire campus later in November. Keep tuned.
Maybe if you try to talk them into it, they'll maybe bring it to Menomonie too. So talk to them. Yeah.
One other thing, I wanted to ask your opinion on trains. I feel like Wisconsin has a good train infrastructure. I was just thinking about this weekend, but I think that trains are a good environmentally friendly way we can incorporate, especially long terms or like farther travel transportation of a lot of things. So we already have a lot of train tracks here, so updating kind of our technology in relation to trains and starting to incorporate them. What do you think about the possibility of using train?
Yeah, as a city council member, we're always looking for alternative transportation options. The transportation sector now accounts for the highest percentage of carbon emissions. It transitioned, I think, from electricity generation to now transportation. And so driving cars across our country and across our world is contributing the most to carbon emissions. And so the more that we can find ways to provide alternates to that, the better. I should say that Wisconsin was on the path to having a robust train passenger rail system. Unfortunately, that was quashed after Governor Walker was elected, and so to me that really speaks to the importance of elections and the importance of protecting those projects that we think are going to be forwarding our communities as we're in the ballot box. So, yeah.
Kate, first of all, I appreciate your motivation and your passion. I mean, it takes people like you with passion and motivation to get things like this done. Menomonie has been, we've signed on the Paris climate agreement for years, and we did have that meeting with you and others about Menomonie joining this zero. The problem Menomonie, or I have, and bringing it to Menomonie proper, is what's it going to take to do all this? I mean, maybe in 10 years more science will be behind it. I know that Ryland Erdman is here, he's on the city council. And I know the Erdman family has been off the grid or nearly off the grid for years, as far as I can remember. I mean, he's got an electric motorcycle and all kinds of cool, fun things. But how does a city, I mean, we've got diesel trucks plowing our snow, and we've got all this stuff that causes emissions. How do we get to zero? And that's one of the elements I think that is missing is, yeah, we want to set this goal. I'd be all for it, man. I'll tell you what. We're going to sign on here and we're going to be zero by 2050, but 2049 comes to play and we're not there yet. How does that element, I mean, we can kick the ball, But how is that ball going to roll in the right direction down the hill to make all this happen? And I know it takes people like you and Jim and the Erdmans and all of us to play a part in that. But as the mayor, I have a little bit of difficulty on, you know, are we going to have electric snowplows, or are they going to be maybe natural gas, or what is it that's going to make it happen?
Yeah, without that technology that hasn't been created yet, it's hard to imagine what our communities will look like after we've achieved these goals, and it's hard to imagine how we're going to reach that. All I can say is that, you know, the city of Eau Claire set our goals not knowing how we're going to get to 100% and not having control over how that technology is going to progress. You know, cities across the country have done that. Our state, our governor has done that, and even Xcel Energy has done that in setting these goals, not knowing exactly how they're going to get to 100%. And all I can say is that we have to put faith. You know, as a young person looking at, I hope, like 70 more years on this earth, maybe 60. I hope that you know, we can set these goals and put that faith in the technology and set a standard for this industry to help us get there. That we are expecting them. We're setting these goals knowing full well that they need to step up too, and I think that they are, and I think that they realize that. I think that just because we can't see that finish line isn't a reason why we can't get a start. And I have, you know, what I've seen from Eau Claire is that setting that vision has totally changed the game, totally changed the way that we've done our work around clean energy, and I think that's really the important part, is setting that vision and then having local leaders continue that vision through the next 30 years, and that means having folks. And that means having folks, you know, on the city council who are gonna hold space and hold respect for that vision that the Menomonie City Council hopefully will set. And it means the voters holding them accountable to achieving that goal over the next 30 years.
You realize that now you are invited to come and speak for our city council.
Oh, I would be happy to. Yes, thank you.
I just want to add a few words to what Kate said, which I think was a great answer, first of all, and I'm in complete agreement with it. But, you know, if we look at the Paris Agreement, which Menomonie has supported, you know, if we look at the, what are termed the nationally determined contributions, which is just basically each country's version of what it will do to reach global commitments that will keep us at 1.5 degrees or 2 degrees Celsius, right? So if we look at those, currently the nationally determined contributions, if you add them all up, get us to something like 3.6 degrees. Like, we're not even close to 1.5, much less 2, or sorry, 2, much less 1.5. So what are they thinking, right? Is this just a huge disappointment? And the answer is no, really. Because every 5 years, the world community, this will happen again in 2020, the world community and the United Nations get together, and the term they're using is ratchet up the ambition. And I think it's actually a lovely sort of evocative term, ratchet up the ambition. We need more ambition, and the ambition will come. The ambition will come as climate disasters become more frequent. The ambition will come as human health is more compromised. The ambition will come when our young people continue to inspire us weekly and monthly and daily. So yes, we make these sort of, our chancellor would say, big, hairy, audacious goals in order to know that we don't know the full path to get there. Having said that, what's it going to involve? Well, electrification is clearly a big issue, right? If you think about all the houses that are heated with natural gas and propane and fuel oil, we need to move them to electrification because, thank you, Xcel, right? You're going to take care of a large portion of at least the electric grid for us, right? We're planning on that. But next is the vehicular part. And the vehicular part is really challenging, right? Especially air flight, but we're seeing more and more biofuels enter the market already. One of the lovely things about shifting the field, as I was kind of trying to show there, is there are a whole host of technologies that are, we would say, just waiting to enter the marketplace, that are creating new liquid fuels from renewable sources instead of from fossil fuel energy, but they're just too expensive right now. They can't compete. And all we need to do is we need to make fossil fuels pay their true costs to society so that these new technologies can be developed. And just think of the jobs that will arise from these new technologies, these startups and the rest. And it's very exciting. And so, yeah, we don't fully know the answer. Turns out there's a lot of answers that just aren't, they're not solar and they're not wind. And so we don't hear about them. They're out there, but they need the ability to enter the marketplace, and this is why we need to change the cost structure of our energy.
I just want to add this to your story here. Mayor Randy, even if you don't know how to get to 2050 with this idea, are you looking at some of the small pieces that will get you there? Because that's what City of Eau Claire is doing. They started looking at what is available, what can we do. Some 8 or 10 years ago, we were talking, my husband and I, about how much longer our furnace would last. And I said, we should look into geothermal. And Fred said, well, it's an existing house, it's 30 years old, it's not gonna work. So I said, well, all we can do is talk to somebody about it. And he contacted a company that's been in business outside of Claire for 20 years, so it's not a fly-by-night. And they sent a guy over, he looked at our house, he said, oh, this will be a piece of cake. It cost not much more than a high-efficiency furnace would have cost. But then we put geothermal in. We already had solar panels. We didn't have air conditioning before. But the geothermal not only did the heat all winter, it did the cooling. Woohoo!
Really nicely too.
We had to ask. We had to ask. We had to look at those pieces, and you're not thinking about looking at them until you have that goal.
Yeah, thank you. It's a great example. It's a climate story, exactly. Did I see a question back here? Yeah.
A question for Jim. You talked about Syria and the drought migration. Can you talk a little bit more about the global impact on wars and what's going to happen in the next 10 years?
If anything keeps me up at night, it's probably that. I mean, honestly. Because water scarcity is a thing, right? I mean, water scarcity is becoming more and more pronounced for interesting reasons. We see water scarcity begin to spread through areas of Southeastern Asia and certainly Africa, in part because, for good reasons. As incomes increase and we're seeing the impoverished have access to greater amounts of protein, i.e. meat, we're seeing that requires large amounts of water. As we're seeing electrification, including in India, turns out that the creation of energy requires vast amounts of water. And so as we see the developing world begin to develop in ways that advance the humanity of the world's poorest, we're also seeing increasing numbers of threats to social stability in those same regions. Because water is something like, no, not going to remember the statistics, sorry, but the number of people who live in areas that are considered water scarce are set to skyrocket. And of course, climate makes that much more difficult because at the same time, and this is not a contradiction, at the same time, climate change causes spreading droughts and intensified droughts, and at the same time causes intensified flooding. That's just the global hydrological cycle. That's the physics of more quick evaporation of water from a landscape which causes droughts, and the accumulation of more and more water in the atmosphere from evaporation, which can come down as floods. And so you take that outcome of foreseeable outcome of climate change, which is water scarcity, and you put it in some of the less stable parts of the geopolitical world, and I fear for that. I don't know if that answered your question. I'm just kind of using you all as my sort of, I feel like it's my confessional. These are the things that keep me up at night.
So back to the question of that is, do you see a migration happening in the United States over the next 10 years?
Do I see a migration occurring in the United States in the next 10 years?
Florida.
So the audience is yelling Florida at me. Yeah. Do you know
I just
examples?
wanted to say that I think it was in Paris to Pittsburgh, there's a part of that movie that talks about Orlando, Florida is planning for refugees from Miami.
So,
They are, as a city, they're planning for it.
So I'm just going to repeat that because it's powerful. There's a great movie that came out in the last 2 years called Paris to Pittsburgh, in which the city of correct me if I'm wrong, Orlando is planning for Miami refugees. And this is related to, this is of course a different kind of refugees, and this is people in urban areas that are suffering from what we call dry sky flooding. This is simply because sea level rise is causing backs up through sewer systems and causes all sorts of flooding. And so we're going to lose our coastal systems, certainly in Florida, Louisiana, our coastal cities, the eastern seaboard, North Carolina, eventually the inland valley of California. That one will really hurt because that's the fruit basket of the nation. So yes, 10 years, maybe. 50 years, almost certain.
I just want to add too that the U.S. Department of Defense is actually one of the leaders in climate research because they see directly in the Middle East and at home how climate change is currently impacting our national security and the security of the world, and how it's impacting, you know, the progression of wars and aggression across the world. And so that in itself tells me that there's a real international concern for climate change. It has been said, but I just really want to raise that there are U.S. citizens currently who are already climate refugees from Louisiana and other parts of the country, and so you know, that migration is already happening, and so we only can expect that it'll continue over the next 10 years and certainly worsen if we don't take action. I think a lot about actually immigration and how it relates to climate change and our national rhetoric right now around immigration and how challenging that is now, and how challenging and how much more challenging that's going to get as climate change progresses, and all the more reason to kind of look at these issues intersectionally. Any other questions? All right, yeah.
You mentioned earlier that the biggest now starting to carbon data collection.
Yeah, so UW Stout is collecting its own data right now. They are doing that by the ingenuity of students, by student power, and so we've been working to connect. So the city of Menomonie has not yet started that data collection, which is really fundamentally important to setting these climate goals. We don't know how far we have to go or when we've reached those goals if we don't know where we're at right now. And so we've been working to connect the city to resources at the university with classes, capstone classes, and professors who might be able to help with that, as well as a program that Xcel Energy actually funds to fund paid fellowship positions to do work like this. And so where we've been, as a resource, we've been trying to help connect the city to those things.
I'll just follow on because I think that's a great example where Menomonie is following the wonderful example that was set by Eau Claire in this instance, where the University of Wisconsin-Eau Claire, we had honors courses that measured the campus carbon footprint of our university, started by my colleague over here, Dr. Kate Hale, from Citizens Climate Lobby, and myself. My class right now is working on the campus carbon footprint as well as one of our local farms and an industry. And so that expertise, starting even 6 or 8 years ago, formed the labor pool, if you will, for the city when Ned Noel hired one of our students to be one of the first interns that measured the carbon footprint of the municipal operations. And then later, a University of Wisconsin Stout student who is getting his master's degree, I believe, from the UW Extension on sustainable forgot the name of the master's degree. Anyway, so he's working with Menomonie now in terms of measuring the city footprint, not the municipal operation footprint, the whole city. And now I'm starting to, with my students, my hope is that they will continue to work with the county of Eau Claire as they go on to start measuring the footprint of the entire county in preparation for their own 2050 commitment. So you do need that baseline data, absolutely. Can students be a part of this? A key part of this? Absolutely. Even better when they're paid.
All right, so we'll be around for more questions if you have any. As a reminder, we have the mayor here, Don Keeter from the county, Xcel Energy and the League of Women Voters, Citizens Climate Lobby, all people who are ready to answer questions. A couple housekeeping reminders. Please stick around for another beer from Zymergy. They're so generous to host us. Let's give a round of applause to Zymergy. Please check in with the and sign in if you have not already. That's important to us. And also visit the Take Action table. That's the whole point of this. So thank you all for being here. Really appreciate it.